Omer and Albert continued working together in same company for over 3 years plus. At this point Omer clocked 29 while Albert has clocked 35 right now. Albert's mother is on his neck for marriage as he is no longer getting younger, but Albert is still in the state of confusion. His instincts kept telling him now that the pregnancy he denied 3 years ago is actually his child, but he is so confused on how to handle the matter cause he messed things up himself and denied his own blood. Before we dive in, subscribe and comment where you are watching from. Enjoy the rest of the stories. One fateful Friday, Omer's son was on holiday, so she decided to bring him to the office. Immediately Albert sets his eyes on the boy. He said to himself calmly, "This is my son, this is my blood," because the child looked exactly like Albert. Omer saw how Albert stared at the boy for a very long time while he was playing outside, but she pretended like she see nothing. Right now Albert's heart is full of regret for rejecting his own son, since he could not help it anymore and Omer is not giving him the attention he is seeking for. He decided to speak to Omer's personal assistants to help him talk to her just to give him a listening ear. That was how Omer's personal assistants get to know the whole story about Albert, Omer, and Darlington her son. At this point, Albert's mum was still pressuring him to bring home a wife as he is no longer getting younger. But then Albert has a fiancée named Trisha. They have been in an open relationship for over 2 years now. He was planning to settle down with her before Omer and her son came into the picture again. Right now, Albert is madly in love with Omer as she now matches the class he ever wanted for himself. Trisha was also on his neck for marriage, so he is in so much confusion right now. Albert told his mum that he will bring home a wife soon, that he is just trying to make sure he got the right woman. Trisha threatening to leave him if he is not proposing to her anytime soon. The young man had no choice than to plan marriage arrangement with Trisha. 3 months later, their wedding card was out. He shared his card to his co-workers, gave one to Omer's personal assistants to drop at Omer's office. Her personal assistants did as she was instructed. When Omer saw the invitation card, she smiled and nodded her head. On the day of their wedding, Omer dressed up in her beautiful attire and drove down to the event center. Immediately Albert saw Omer at the reception. He couldn't take his eyes off her. Omer played the big girl role, sprayed him some money and left immediately. After the wedding celebration, everyone went back to their various homes to resume work on Monday. Albert was given 3 months leave to enjoy his new home. After 3 months, he resumed work fully, bought Omer a bottle of wine to thank her for honoring his invitation. 1 year later Trisha put to bed a baby girl. Everyone celebrated with them. One morning at the office, Omer sent for Albert to come to her office. What Albert has been looking for, he quickly rushed to Omer's office, wondering why she called him. In his little mind, he thought Omer wanted to talk about their past, but no, it was a brown envelope that contains a sack letter. Omer handed it over to him and said, "Your services are no longer needed here. Have a great day, Mr. Albert, you can leave now." Albert suddenly lost his tongue. He picked the envelope and left with so much pain in his eyes. He said in his heart, "I know it's a payback time, but this work means so much to my life and my family." Albert went back home, met his wife. She asked him why he came back so early and he gave her the sack letter. His wife asked him, "What is your offense?" He replied, "The new manager said my services are no longer needed." At this point, Albert and his wife is just surviving from the supermarket he opened for her. Albert started another job hunting. He searched for jobs in the city of Port Harcourt but couldn't get a good paying job. He started going to the shop with his wife hoping to get a better one. But Trisha doesn't like that idea. Because Albert has lost his job, Trisha started showing him the ugly side of her. They kept living like cat and rat, fighting and quarreling every day, as he no longer provides the things he usually provide for her. Albert couldn't get his peace of mind in his own house, so he started keeping out late, drinking with friends just to ease off the mental stress he is going through. Albert lost everything including himself after getting married to Trisha. One beautiful morning, Albert woke up with the thought of searching for Omer's private number because the only person on his mind right now is Omer. So he contacted Omer's personal assistants and asked her to please send him Omer's private line. Her personal assistant was scared of doing that because she doesn't want to lose her job, so she opened up and told Omer that Albert is asking for her private line. Omer asked her to send it to him. She still felt something for Albert, but the pain he cost her was way too much to bear. Her personal assistants forwarded her number to Albert. Immediately Albert got the number, he added her on WhatsApp and said, "Hi Omer, it's me Albert. I have been looking for a way to apologize to you and make things right, but you denied all access. I'm so sorry for hurting you so badly in the past. Please forgive me Omer." Omer replied to him and said the deed has been done. Albert kept apologizing. But Omer said to him, "These apologies make no sense right now, focus on your family and let me be." Omer blocked his line immediately. Albert continues texting Omer, but then he can't get her anymore. When Albert noticed that Omer had blocked his line, his pain became worse, because right now he is no longer on good terms with his wife. Albert invested so much in that supermarket he opened for his wife, he regretted investing in her though, but this was just karma catching up with him gradually. 6 months later, Albert found out that the daughter his wife had for him was not his biological child, he has been training another man's child. Another kind of pain altogether. Albert confronted his wife about their daughter Ella. Albert asked him who is the biological father of Ella. Trisha kept quiet and didn't say a word. Albert asked her again angrily, "Who is the father of this child?" Holding Trisha on the neck and almost strangling her, she suddenly said, "Alfred, your friend, we have been having a secret affair for so long now." Albert felt so disappointed, picked his phone and called his friend Alfred, phone ringing. Alfred picked up the call, and Albert asked him, "Can we meet now at our usual spot?" At this point Albert has seized his wife's phone so she couldn't reach Alfred on the phone. Alfred said, "It's okay, I will meet you there in the next 30 minutes. Albert was ready to kill Alfred that night. On getting to the spot, Alfred was already there as his house was closer to the spot. 5 minutes later, Albert arrived there, started punching his friend on his face without saying a word. Omer was at the same spot that same night having a good time with her friend Myra. Albert almost punched Alfred to death. Immediately people came out to separate them, as Albert has created a scene already. Omer and her friend also came out to see what's happening. Behold, it was Albert. Omer screamed his name. Immediately he heard Omer's voice. He dropped the weapon on his hand, knelt down in front of Omer and said, "Omer, I am finished," with tears rolling down his eyes. Omer held his hand and asked him to stand up. He stood up and hugged Omer. Omer hugged him back. Omer asked him to get into the car so she could drive him home to freshen up. Omer dropped him a pole before his house and asked him to go ahead, as he doesn't want a problem with his wife. Albert came down from the car, thanked Omer, and went to his house. Albert got to his house only to find out that his wife packed every property that he bought in their house and left him with nothing. Albert was lost in thought as he doesn't know what and where to start. He dipped his hands in his pocket to pick his phone. Immediately he realized he forgot his phone in Omer's car. He doesn't know what to do at this point. Omer went back to the same spot where she was having fun with her friend Myra. Immediately she looked at the back seat and realized that Albert forgot his phone in her car. She immediately drove back to Albert's house. Omer didn't want any form of drama from Albert's wife, Trisha, so she stood outside hoping that Albert will come out so she can just give him the phone. Omer waited for few minutes, but Albert didn't show up, so she summoned courage to enter Albert's compound. She got there and knocked 3 times, but no one answered, so she thought of dropping the phone at his doorstep, but on a second thought, she felt someone else might pick the phone since she was not sure if Albert was inside. So she summoned courage and opened the door only to see Albert trying to hang himself to death. Omer screamed, "Albert! Somebody help!" She quickly helped Albert and loosed the rope he tied to hang himself. At this point Albert became helpless and needed to heal from all this mental stress. He knelt down before Omer with tears rolling down his eyes. "Omer, my life is messed up. I don't know where to go from here. My wife took everything I have worked for in this past years. She took the papers of the lands I purchased. She sold the supermarket I invested so much. Where do I go from here? I just want to kill myself and forget everything." Omer looked at him with so much pity, because at this point Albert was really helpless. Omer said to him, "You will bounce back again, but then you need to put yourself together and never try to hang yourself again." He nodded his head and hugged Omer. Few months later, a young man who came back from the United States met Omer in a supermarket where she went shopping. The young man called Ken walked up to Omer and said, "Hey beautiful, I'm Ken, you look so beautiful." Omer replied, "Thank you Ken, you ain't looking bad at all. My name is Omer." They exchanged contact and became friends. 6 months down the line, Ken asked Omer to marry him, but he actually came back to find himself a wife. But then Omer still has feeling and connection with Albert. He still loves Albert despite all she has been through, but her fear is that she doesn't know if Albert feels same way for her. So that night when she got home, she called Lady Margaret and sought advice from her. She told her everything and how she still have some feelings for Albert despite all that has happened. Lady Margaret advised her and she said, "If you want to know if Albert still loves you same way you do, go print a fake wedding card and present to him, tell him he is invited, then from his reaction you will find out the answer to your questions my darling Omer." She smiled and hugged Lady Margaret and said calmly to her, "In my next world I still want to be part of your life, you are such an amazing woman. I love you so much Lady Margaret." Lady Margaret replied, "I love you too, my darling." So Omer proceeded with the plans. One fateful evening Omer called Albert, he picked the call. Omer asked him, "Where are you Albert? The first want to see you." Albert replied, "I'm in my house." Omer said, "Can I come over to your place?" Albert replied, "Yes Omer, you can come to my place." She drove down to Albert's house. On getting there she saw Albert, but he wasn't looking good at all. She asked, "Why are you looking so devastated?" Tears rolled down his eyes and he said, "Omer, I ruined my life with my own hands, and now I can't even fix it back with my own hands." Omer said, "Anyways Albert," she dipped her hand in her bag and brought out the wedding card and gave it to Albert. Albert collected it but couldn't open it. Immediately Albert knelt down before Omer and started shedding tears like a child, and he said to Omer, "Please don't do this to me. If you leave me I can't survive it. Please Omer, I still need you in my life. Don't do this to me. I know I messed things up in the past, but I have learnt my lesson in a very hard way." Omer asked him, "Are you saying I should cancel my wedding because of you?" Albert said, "We belong to each other Omer. I have lost you once and don't want to lose you again. Not ever. You are my life Omer. Please don't leave me." Omer stood up and said to him, "It's fine, I will just go and think about all you have said Albert." And then she left Albert's house immediately. She got home and told Lady Margaret everything that Albert said and his reaction. Lady Margaret advises Omer to give him a second chance since he has realized his mistakes. Omer heeded to the advice. The next morning, Albert called to know if Omer had changed her mind. Omer told him to call her back in a week's time, that she is busy with something. Albert had no choice but to drop the call. At this point Omer was making plans on how to bring Albert back to work as his position was still vacant. But she intended to make it a surprise. Omer also shared her plans with her mother and Lady Margaret, and they both supported her. 1 week later, Albert called to know if Omer had changed her mind. Omer picked the call and promised to call him the upper week. When that upper week came, Omer called him as she promised. The surprise had been planned and she decided to throw a party for him. On that morning everything was set and put in place. Omer picked her phone and called Albert. Phone ringing, Albert picked the call and Omer said, "Albert please, I had a flat tire at the office, can you get a mechanic to come with you to the office to fix my car?" Albert gladly said, "Yes, I will be there before 30 minutes. He quickly called a mechanic, dressed up and went straight to the company. Omer sat in her office waiting for Albert's arrival. He entered the company and called Omer that he is at the gate. Omer asked him to come to her office. On his way to Omer's office, his colleagues welcomed him and everyone was telling him congratulations. Albert was lost, he didn't understand what was going on. Immediately, Omer came out of her office and joined the celebration. Omer said to him, "Welcome back to work Albert. My car was perfectly okay, I just wanted to give you back what I took from you." Albert knelt down with a mixed feeling, crying and laughing at same time. Omer held his hand and lifted him up. The next upper week Albert resumed work fully. His life started turning around and he starts to forget his pain bit by bit. Months later, Albert and Omar became friends again, so Albert was so curious to know how Omar get to know the CEO of P&P Oil and Gas Company. Omar told him everything. They let go of the past and started on a new page. Their love journey begins. 2 months later, Albert properly proposed to Omar and asked her to be his forever. Omar gladly accepted because she loved Albert so much. They were so happy. On the day of their wedding, Lady Margaret, the CEO of P&P Oil and Gas Company, gave them a brand new house and brand new car. They were both excited and couldn't contain their joy. 2 months later, they both now live together, but no, with their son. Darlington was still living with Lady Margaret and Omar's mother. Albert wanted Omar to bring Darlington to live with them, but Omar said no, that won't be possible. Albert: but why, Omar? Omar said to Albert, I want to give my son to Lady Margaret since she was childless. I want Darlington to be Lady Margaret's son because she gave me a life when I had none. So I'm using my son to appreciate Lady Margaret. She is such an amazing woman and she doesn't deserve to be childless. Albert lost his tongue cause he didn't have right over Darlington as he denied the pregnancy. The decision didn't sit well with him, but he had no choice. So Omar told Albert that the next morning they will be visiting Lady Margaret to throw her a party to air her intentions. Albert had no choice than to agree with her because he doesn't want to lose Omar the second time. The next morning they visited Lady Margaret, throw her a party. Then Omar went to Lady Margaret and say, You are such a wonderful woman. You have made my life so beautiful and meaningful. Today I have a surprise for you. Lady Margaret smiled and asked, What surprise are you talking about, my darling Omar? Omar went straight to where her son Darlington was with her mother. Omar carried Darlington and handed him over to Lady Margaret and said, Today I gave you my son, my blood. Today I want you to be a mother to Darlington. Take care of him. A woman like you isn't supposed to be childless. I love you so much, Lady Margaret. Immediately tears rolled down Lady Margaret's eyes. She never expected this from Omar. Lady Margaret hugged her so closely with tears rolling down her eyes, and the party continued. The end.